Good morning, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Would you please stand and worship with us this morning?
Remember those walls that we called sin and shame? Like prisons that we couldn't escape. But he came and he died and he rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave? They were like mountains that stood in our way. But he came and he died, and he rose. Those giants are dead now. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray. But he heard every word, every whisper. Now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of his faithfulness. Never once did he fail, and he never will. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Pull me out of that pit. He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but him. This is our God. This is who he is. He loves us. This is our God. This is what he does. He saves us. For the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. This next song, I feel like, just speaks to me, and I could say the whole band on many different levels. We've done it before. It's called Holy Forever. This song just reminds us about who God really is. I mean, he doesn't change. I mean, he doesn't leave us. He doesn't abandon us. No matter what our circumstances are, no matter what we're going through, he's always there for us. Even in the times where the enemy tells us that he's not and that we're all alone, he's always there. And he's always holy. He's always on a mission. He has a plan for every single person in this room. I truly believe that. And I hope that you all believe that too, because God loves you so much. And I feel like we need to show our love and appreciation for him towards this song. 1,000 generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us, and all who will believe, will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever.
If you've been forgiven, and if you've been redeemed, sing the song forever to the Lamb. If you walk in freedom, and if you bear His name, sing the song forever to the Lamb.
We'll sing the song forever and amen. Hear you angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy, to the King of Kings. Holy, you will always be. Holy, holy forever. You will always be. Holy, holy forever. Will you pray with me? Dear God, we just thank you for everything that you've done and everything that you continue to do. Your work throughout this world is never ending. You are always doing something. Whether we see it or not, you are always here. You've shown many people, you've shown me at least, you've shown everyone here on stage, you've shown everyone here in this congregation that you are God. And you deserve your name. You've done so many things, and you continue to work through so many people. Through ways sometimes we can't even see. When we think we're all gone, we're all lost, we have nothing left, you're here. And that means so much to me, and that means so much to many people here. You constantly remind us that you are you. You are God. You are in control. You are Yahweh. Just remind us to please be faithful in these times of trials or in these times of celebrations, that you gave us these celebrations and you gave us these trials not to harm us but to make us better. Lord, I just pray for every single person here in this room, and that we can leave today not just as another chapel but just as followers of your word. Lord, it is all these things I pray. Amen.
Man. Thanks, worship team. Oh, welcome. Glad you're here. Hope you had a restful weekend and you stayed warm. We got a little chilly over the weekend, and I'm excited for today. I'm excited for the opportunity that you have to hear from one of my good friends, but also just a great teacher of the Word. And Nasser Al-Khatani, he is originally from Saudi Arabia, he came to the States, and he was a follower of Islam, and for a long time, and then Jesus met him. And I love hearing Nasser's story. That's not what you're going to hear today, but he's going to preach the word. He's got a message for you from the Lord. But I love Nasser's story and how the Lord met him and made himself real to him. And Nasser's life did a 180. And so now he's working with Multiply, and he's helping church plants and church leaders all over North Africa, which is mostly Muslim countries, and then in the Middle East. And he's working in these places to help equip and train up leaders so that they can share the gospel and that more and more people can come to know the good news of Jesus Christ. And so I'm excited for you guys to be able to hear from Nasser today, a good friend. Would you please help me welcome Nasser Al-Khatani as he comes to share God's message?
Good morning. So, just being real with you guys, like this is a really hard time for me with the things going on in the Middle East right now, and I don't have any clever, poignant sound bites for you, but I just want to say that as a follower of Jesus, I grieve for the loss of life, no matter who they are, where they live, what their background is, who their family is, and especially as a follower of Jesus, see so many people that I know because of where they are, people that are seeing their lives ended without ever having the opportunity, really, because of where they live, to hear the gospel, to know the truth about who Jesus is. There's nothing sadder or more tragic to me. And we've been in actually a long season this year of a lot of natural disasters and wars and just all over the place. And what can we do, sitting in the middle of Kansas, about those things? We can pray. And so I hope you can resist the urge, if you follow the news, to become numb to the things going on in the world. That's a really easy and natural response, but instead that you would take whatever grief, whatever anger, confusion, whatever that is, and just offer that up to the Lord in prayer. Just let it all out raw. In fact, the rawer the better. There are many places in Scripture where God actually commends the person who just spills their guts before God, even if it includes things like, God, why are you letting this happen? This is disgusting, and where are you? And I thought you were good. And like those kinds of prayers, God really likes because they're real. And our God is a God of relationship, and he wants a real relationship with you. He wants you to be honest with him about how you're feeling. He'll meet you in that, in the rawness, if you're willing to open up yourself and vulnerability before him. So that's all I'm going to say about that. What I am going to share with you guys this morning is, it's sort of interesting because I wasn't thinking about this, but it does kind of connect to my own story of what drew me to Jesus as a devout Muslim, and how I experienced the change of encountering Christ. And so I'm actually going to start. I'm sorry I keep doing this. I don't know how many chapels in a row now I've had where I just keep going back to Leviticus. I'm going to be termed the Leviticus guy. That's going to become my new nickname around here. I'm sorry, guys, but there's so much treasure in Leviticus. I can't help it. So if anybody who's been around me for any length of time talking about the Bible, know I kind of nerd out on things like chiasms, where there's this like cool reflection stuff going on, and just the design of these passages in the Bible, or sometimes whole books of the Bible. And so Leviticus is a chiasm. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's not important. But the main idea to take away from that is that like what's going on in Leviticus is the kind of the theme and the content that it opens up with is being mirrored at the very end of the book. And as you kind of work your way in, it's kind of like it's being reflected backwards until you kind of reach this like center peak of the book. And the reason that I believe that the author of Leviticus wrote it that way was to really highlight that centerpiece and help like to just give you like, if you read Leviticus, you're like, what's the main takeaway? Like there's so much stuff in this book, and some of it's really weird and it has to do with bodily fluids and like some, like what, like as somebody who wants to like know God and follow him, like if I take away one thing from this book, what should that be? And you're gonna, when a book is written in like a chiasm, you're gonna find it in that centerpiece. That centerpiece is gonna help you make sense of everything that surrounds it. And it just so happens that the center of Leviticus is found in chapter 16, which is talking about a very special feast day in the calendar of the Hebrew Bible, and it's the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, if you've perhaps heard of that. And like, if you ask most people who know anything about it, like, what is the big deal about Yom Kippur? Well, that's the day, that's the like one time a year where, you know, the people make these sacrifices, and then, you know, sacrifices are accepted, and then, you know, God like forgives all the people for all their sins that year, and they get kind of like another year, kind of like a big like restart, and their sins, you know, get covered, you know, by the blood of these sacrifices. And often people want to then take that and like make like a direct line between that feast day and what Jesus did on the cross, which it's understandable why they would do that. The issue that I have with making that direct line to that, to try to understand the cross, is the Bible. The Bible doesn't actually do that. Jesus was not crucified on Yom Kippur. He could have been. I mean, presumably, you know, Jesus said, "Nobody takes my life from me. I willingly lay it down." So he and the Father chose the time of when that would happen, and it wasn't Yom Kippur. It was Passover, which is a totally different holiday, and is not primarily about dealing with people's sin. It's about freedom. It's about setting people free. It's about inviting them into a relationship, a deep, intimate relationship with God. And I think it's very intentional that's the big idea, that the Bible wants you to connect with what Jesus, whatever went on there on the cross, like that was the main purpose of it, was to set you free to be in relationship with God. Okay, so what is Yom Kippur? Like, is it still relevant then for a Christian? Should we think about it? Should we pay attention to it? You know, what does Jesus have to do then with this? And that's what I want to talk about this morning. So, like I said, like the big idea that most people will tell you, Yom Kippur is about getting people, like it's the Day of Atonement, and atonement is like a covering. And so it's dealing with our sin. And if that really was like the main idea of Day of Atonement, I think this chapter 16 should be a lot shorter than it is. And what's really interesting, and I'm not going to read it to you guys this morning, but I encourage you, like, take some time this week and just sit and read Leviticus 16. It's like one page in the Bible. It's not that big a deal. Just read through it and just notice, for a chapter that's supposed to be about atoning for sins, I mean, that's what it says, you know, on the beginning of the chapter. Like, look how far down you have to get before it even starts talking about sin at all. Like it's really like the last 10% of the chapter is actually, like, it's all the way down in verse, like, 29, where it says, oh, by the way, it's on this month and this day, and you guys are all going to, like, where it says in some of your translations, like, you're going to afflict yourself. Like, this isn't, like, go get a whip and whip yourself. It just means fast. Okay, so it's chill out. It's okay. Don't self-harm. It just means you shall fast on this day. So take a day and fast, and then the high priest is going to go and do this thing. And this is on verse 34. On this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you. You shall be clean before Yahweh from all your sins. And it's at towards the very end of the chapter. So, like, what's the bulk of the chapter about? The bulk of the chapter, like, it starts off with, hey, tell Aaron, he's the high priest, and this is God talking to Moses. He's like, hey, tell Aaron, you know, like, we've set up this tabernacle, this tent for God that's in the middle of the camp of all of Israel. They're all living in tents, and God's got a tent too. And God's tent, there's this large courtyard, and everybody can come into the courtyard and experience God and offer up sacrifices and share meals together. It's really beautiful. And then at the kind of the back end of the kind of the courtyard, of it, like there's this special tent for God, and the tent, like the tent is separated between these two sections. The first section is the holy part of the tent, and only like the priest can go in there. And then there's like a curtain, and beyond that curtain is like the most holy part, and that's where the ark of the covenant sits, not Noah's ark. It's like this gold covered box that's symbolically represents like the footstool of God. And so sort of like God's throne is in that part of the tent. Like you can't see it, people don't make it. It's just sort of, people understand that it's somehow spiritually present there, and God's feet are resting over this box. And what's in the box? If you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, nothing, it's sand. That's not right. You can read other parts of the Bible to see what was in the box. Some cool stuff's in the box. But the main idea, though, is that most holy place, like it starts off with, tell Aaron he can't just go in there anytime he wants. It's most holy. And in fact, there's only one day a year that Aaron gets to go in, and after him, it's just whoever the high priest is, only the high priest gets to go into this most holy place. And he says, like, you have to take this very seriously, because you could die if you don't take this seriously. And as you read that, you see, and like there's all this talk about these sacrifices that they make, and the sprinkling of blood and anointing. You're like, what's going on with this? Like, why is this like treated like such a big deal? And if you read the text, you'll see, like what I see there anyway, that God is emphasizing. He's like, you need to understand, I'm present in that most holy place above the ark. Like I am in some way physically present there, and you can't just like barge into my presence and you're going to touch me when you come in there. And that could be deadly for you if you don't do that in the right posture, in the right way. And God's like, I don't want to hurt you accidentally. Like, and you have to understand that in the context of this story, like Aaron's two oldest boys just died because they didn't take this seriously. They were so and I don't think it was like their hearts were impure or anything. I think that they were sincerely, they love God, they longed to be in his presence, and when they saw an opportunity, they saw that the fire and the presence of God was filling the tent, they just couldn't help, they rush in like, yes, I want to be with God, and then they died. And then we can say, well, they got what they wanted, now they're with God, right? But God's like, but I don't want your life to get cut short. I have things for you to do here on earth, and so don't like come to me before it's time. Like you can't, this is very serious. And so it's all this time in the chapter just focusing on like this, how, it seems to be focused on like, how can a human being successfully enter in to the presence of the most holy God and make contact, touch him, and walk out still alive. And then it seems to be like at the very end, and then, oh, by the way, your sins are now atoned for as a people, and you're cleansed. And I see that as kind of I think we have it all backwards. We think we need to get our sins cleansed so that we can go and touch God and be in his presence. But what I see in Leviticus, of all places, is the opposite. We got to find a way to successfully come in and approach God. And it almost seems like the atonement part, the cleansing part, is the byproduct of contact with the divine. And you might think, that's crazy, Nasser. No, I was told that the Old Testament, God, he hates sin, and he can't bear to look at it, and he can't have sin come into his presence. Like, actually read the Torah, and you'll see, like, so many places where it says the high priest is bringing the sins of the people with him on his shoulders into the presence of God. So apparently, like, God doesn't freak out as much about our sin as we do, and he can handle that. And so the main thing seems to be like, how can we actually approach God, though, so that he can deal with our sins and cleanse them? And so something I think I've shared this with some of you when I was speaking at an event last spring. I've been on this journey for the last year or so, going through the Gospel of Luke, and I got kind of made aware of this idea that a biblical scholar had, who's now passed away, Dr. M.D. Goulder, that he had a theory that the Gospel of Luke was actually written to be a devotional on the 5 books of Moses, on the Torah. And so that as you're reading through Luke, you could actually like line up each story in Luke with the consecutive passages in Torah, and it becomes like a commentary / devotional, kind of help us see how Jesus is fulfilling, incarnating these stories that we read in the books of Moses. And so I was really curious to see, because I want to know, how does Jesus connect with the Day of Atonement? How does he connect with Yom Kippur? So what's Luke's devotional, if you will, on this passage in Leviticus? And you'll find it in Luke chapter 7, starting on verse 36. So just checking my time. I have a little bit of time now, so that's good, because I want to actually read this part. I do want to read verse by verse and go through it. So Luke 7, verse 36, it says, so one of the Pharisees, I have to stop there just because I always have to do this. When we hear Pharisees, are they good guys or bad guys in the Bible? I don't hear it. Bad guys, right. Everybody always says bad guys. Okay. And it's because it seems like Jesus has a problem with them. You need to understand in the first century, at this time in Israel, there are various different groups. You had the Sadducees, who were kind of this, I've heard it described, they were like a bunch of mafia priestly families that were kind of ruling over the temple, and they were pretty bad news guys. I mean, they were corrupt, taking bribes, exploiting the people. They didn't seem to actually, they seemed like a bunch of atheist priests, honestly, because I think if they actually believed in God, they wouldn't be behaving in this manner. And so I don't have a problem with people characterizing the Sadducees as kind of bad guys. They were the ones ultimately that were pushing the hardest for Jesus' death, simply because he seemed like the real deal, which is just wild. Look at all the miracles this guy is doing. He's clearly from God. Let's kill him before people start actually following God instead of us. That's your worst stereotypes of the bad religious leader. But the Pharisees were the people that saw the corruption in Jerusalem and were we don't want to be like that. We want to be real in our relationship with God. And they were the kind of people that were kind of constantly moving further and further away from the big cities, living in the country, homeschooling their kids, trying to teach their children the Bible from a young age, because you can't trust, the world's education system. And they're we're going to really take this book seriously. We're going to live it. They're going to incorporate it to every part of our daily life. I think a lot of rural Christians in America today will find a lot to like about the Pharisees. And I think Jesus liked the Pharisees, honestly. Because if you look, he spends more time around the Pharisees than any other group in Israel. He's obviously drawn to them. He obviously sees that their hearts are pure and has such affection for them. But he does critical about them. And the one thing he criticizes them the most for is their lack of mercy. They're so devoted to God, and they take that, they're so proud of their devotion to God and how they raise their families and how they live their lives and all of that, that then they look around at all the people who aren't living that way, and they look at them with contempt. And they build walls, sometimes physical, but usually not, metaphorical walls, to keep those kinds of people out, because they don't want to be impure. And they start to see people that aren't like them religiously as sort of impure, and they're defiled, and we don't want to be defiled by presence. We're going to just keep all those people at arm's length. They're not welcome in our synagogues, in our assemblies, in our worship meetings. They're not good enough. They got to figure out their lives first, and then they can come in, because we've all got our lives figured out. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So don't be too hard on the Pharisees unless you've taken some time to be self-aware and, realized how often we are just like them. So one of these Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him. And so Jesus went to the Pharisee's house and was reclining at table. And so that seems nice. Here's an olive branch from a Pharisee. The Pharisee's looking at Jesus. He's mingling with all these sinful people. What's problem? What's wrong with him? But this Pharisee, okay, maybe this is one of the ones that's he's self-aware. He gets it. He wants to understand Jesus better. And it says, and behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that Jesus was reclining at table in this Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, She began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with ointment. Now just take a moment, because so much we can miss the power of these stories if we read through them too quickly and we don't actually put ourselves like in the scene, like imagine it, what this would have looked like if you were in the room with this Pharisee and his dinner guests and with Jesus and his disciples. And so you're having kind of a dinner party, if you will. Everybody's like reclining down, kind of the tables would be really low to the ground. Everybody's just like snuggled in around each other around this thing. And then this woman comes in, not invited. Like, how many of you ever had like a complete stranger just walk into your house at dinner time? Imagine if that actually happened, what would be your feelings in that moment? How would you react, right? And so this woman just comes right, and what kind of a person would do that? Just barge into somebody's house at dinner time. And then look what she begins doing, right? She's sitting there like Jesus' feet are tucked behind him because he's sitting on the ground. She just goes right for his feet and is kissing them and crying on them and anointing them. Like, she's doing all these things to his feet right in the middle of dinner. Right? Like, think about what would, if you were, one of the disciples watching this and like, is Jesus going to say something? Like, like, this is not normal behavior, okay? What is going on? And then we're told in verse 39, now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, we don't know what the disciples were thinking, but we know what this Pharisee thought because the Bible is telling us. He said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. So apparently this Pharisee knows who this lady is, knows her background, whatever, and he's just disgusted by, that's his reaction. He's disgusted by this, and he's obviously doesn't have a very high opinion of Jesus. Like, that this is his first thought. Like, this guy he's not even a prophet. Like, he's nobody. He's a fake. And so my first thought then is, why did he even invite Jesus to dinner? Like, he doesn't seem to be very fond of Jesus. Well, this is where it's helpful to have a little bit of Middle East cultural knowledge, because it's an honor-shame culture. And inviting someone into your home and showing them generous hospitality is considered very honorable behavior in the community. And usually, like, the more well-known and popular, honorable your guest might be, the more honor for the person that shows hospitality. And so it seems to me like at this point in the story, Jesus is becoming a little bit famous. He's got a lot of people's attention. He's doing some miracles, casting out demons, healing the sick, raising the dead. That's a big deal. Whatever you think about him, you could at least he's drawn crowds, right? And so it seems like this Pharisee thinks, well, I don't know what I believe about this guy. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But if I invite him to dinner, that looks good on me. Because if he is the real deal, I can say, hey, I hosted him at my house. I slaughtered the fattened calf for Rabbi Yeshua, right? It seems like he's not doing this for Jesus. He's doing it for himself. Now I'm not such a fan of this Pharisee. And we'll see, how's Jesus going to respond? So verse 40, and Jesus answering said to him, remember, he's thinking this in his mind, and Jesus is answering his thought out loud. And I don't think, by the way, this is because Jesus is a mind reader, had ESP, magic, God powers. I think it's because the reality, if you guys don't know this, I'm just going to let you know, people can tell what you're thinking. People can tell when you're judging them. People can tell when you're harboring any kind of bias against them, any kind of preconception. People can tell. So, and I think Jesus could tell. He could see the look on this guy's face, and he knew exactly what this guy was thinking. And so Jesus answering said, Simon, I have something to say to you. And I love that. Like, Jesus is still in this culture, like, he's so polite up to a point. Because he's got some hard things to say, but he actually says, hey, I've got something. When he says, I have something to say to you, he's basically saying, I have words for you, Simon. And offering Simon the opportunity to say, I don't want to hear it, which I think is a good lesson for us, because sometimes we just like, I want to confront this person. It's good to follow Jesus' example and ask permission. Maybe, because if somebody doesn't want to be confronted, they're not going to hear anything you have to say anyway. It's good to knock on the door first and like be invited in to share something hard that you want to say with someone else. You just ask permission. It's polite. Jesus is pretty polite. So he says that, and so what does Simon say? He says, say it, teacher. He's like, bring it on. What kind of fault are you going to find on me? I'm doing everything in my life right, unlike some people. And very Jesus way, he, like a good Middle Easterner, he's indirect in his communication. He doesn't just come out and say it. He tells a story about the thing he wants to say to like let it sink in rather than go just directly into it. And so he says, a certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and another 50. And when they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? And don't worry about, I don't know what a denarii is. Like, okay, one person owed, $500,000 and one person owed $50,000, right? Just doesn't matter. Whatever it is. Which one's going to love him more? Like, what would you say? What would you say? Who do you think? Who do you think is going to love the person more? The 500, the one had more, right? Good answer. Because that's the one, we'll see, what does Simon say? He says, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And Jesus said to him, you've judged rightly. Good job. Good job. That's correct. And so then turning to the woman, so up until this point, Jesus has not even acknowledged her presence. He's just let her be. He hasn't stopped her. But he also hasn't said, oh, thanks. Like he's just, like she wasn't even there, right? He hasn't acknowledged her until now. But now he's turned away from Simon, the host, and now he's turning to this woman. And he's turning to her, he says to Simon as he's looking at this woman, he says, do you see this woman? I entered your house and you gave me no water for my feet. Ooh, Jesus just publicly shamed Simon. Because in the Middle East, we don't call out people that directly when they do something bad. We kind of hint at it. And now Jesus is done being polite. He's given Simon a chance to kind of prepare his heart for the hard stuff he's going to hear. And now Jesus is going right to the hard stuff. He's like, you didn't wash my feet. Like, what kind of a host doesn't wash the feet of his guests in the Middle East? A bad host. A shameful host. Okay? But guess what? She has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss. What kind of a host doesn't kiss his guests when they walk in? I know, okay, America, you guys don't do that. But in my culture, in my community, in the Middle East, like when we bring a guest in, we kiss them. Not on the lips. It's okay. But from the time I came in, she's not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil. And I know this, again, sounds kind of weird to you guys, but in the Middle East, even to this day, it's very common. We invite guests in. We like burn some incense, or we give them some perfume or something to help them feel refreshed and to smell good. And so they're not self-conscious about any of these things. So they did the same thing back in Jesus. Like, this would be normal, expected, like baseline behavior for a good host. And Jesus just like, you have been a bad host in like the only thing you've done is invite me into your house so you can say you had me in your house. Like Jesus is basically saying, I see through you, Simon. I see your actual motivations, and you don't love me. You're doing all of this for yourself. She said, so you didn't anoint my head with oil, but she's anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, which are many, by the way. Yeah, okay, yeah, you got that right. She's got more sins than you, Simon. But guess what? Her sins are forgiven. For she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. And then he said to her, so this is the first thing. Now he's been looking at her this whole time talking to Simon. Now he speaks to her and he says, your sins are forgiven. Then those who were at table with him began to say amongst themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Indeed, who is this? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace, or go in shalom, which means more than just like absence of conflict. It means you are whole now. You are restored. There's nothing missing from you now. all of you has been put back together by this. And this is a great story, right? This is the kind of story, this is the reason that we love Jesus so much when we see stories like this. But I want you to think back. Luke has positioned this story in his gospel so that it lines up, if you're reading it along in parallel with Torah, so that it lines up with Leviticus 16, which is a story about how coming in this special way and touching God, and you walk out and there's forgiveness of sins and atonement. Does that have anything to do with this story? Yeah. Because who's the high priest in this story? Who's the high priest in this story who comes out with forgiveness? It's the woman. It's this woman of the city with her many sins. And this is really encouraging because I want to encounter God. I want to be in his presence. I want to experience him. And if I have to do it the Leviticus 16 way, and I got to go and I got to wear special clothes, and oh, by the way, I got to be like a direct blood descendant of Aaron. Well, that's kind of hard to arrange. And then even if I could, like I got to like kill a bull and kill a goat, and then we have the 2 goats, and like you read, like there's a lot of stuff to do. Is it still worth it? Absolutely. If that's the only way, for sure, I'll do that every year. But now that Jesus has come, there's another way. And that way seems to be to come in and lay yourself down before him, to worship him, to recognize by faith that even approaching him, that you know that you may, whatever you're carrying, whatever is weighing on you, when you leave, when you walk back out again, you are not going to be the same. Like just having, because he says, your faith has saved you. So apparently she went in desperate and believing that contact with Jesus would accomplish the same thing for her life that the high priest going into the Holy of Holies would for the nation. That's a massive faith right there. I love this lady. And when you look at how she's paralleled with Simon the Pharisee, like it's crazy. It's kind of like what John does in his gospel with Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman. Like you just go down, like make a list, like a character profile of both of them, and it's just like total opposites. You have a man, you have a woman, you have a person with a name. This lady has no name, right? This guy who thinks he's, not without sin, but very, not much of a sinner, this lady who has all this sin. And yet you look at how the whole time, what is Simon doing in this scene? He is trying to honor himself. And what is this woman doing? She doesn't care. She knows that she's living in shame, and she goes over and above. Like she shames herself by coming in uninvited, coming and kissing his feet in a mixed company, and all of these things, shameful behavior. She doesn't care about her own personal honor the way Simon does. She's willing to throw that all in the garbage in order to honor Jesus. And this guy who was supposed to be his host is trying to honor himself and shame Jesus by not offering him the baseline gifts of hospitality. And I spent my first 20 years of my life as a Muslim trying to seek honor for myself. And it wasn't until I saw Jesus for who he is and understood what he has done for us on the cross that has opened up the way that we too can enter his presence and touch him and walk away clean. So let me just pray for us in that. Abba, Father, this is a real deep stuff, and we just opened the lid on this, and I'm just trusting that you are present right now in this room with us, and that you are speaking to hearts and minds, and that, Lord, you will continue to bring us back to this story throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout this month, and continue speaking to us about this and what it would look like for each one of us in our lives, just to lay down our guard, to just put ourselves in the most vulnerable place possible at the feet of Jesus in worship and in gratitude, and just simply by faith reach out and touch him, trusting that not only is he not disgusted by us, but he longs for that contact with us. And that if we lay ourselves down like that, Not only will we encounter him, but we will be changed by the experience. And so, God, we just thank you for who you are. We thank you for your incredible grace and mercy, your patience with us, patience you showed to Simon, like you're so patient with him, longing to teach him a better way. Your overflowing love and faithfulness, God. That is who you are. That is why we love you. That is why we worship you, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.